In the event of a mishap, is the township also liable for the mishap occurred if they had the opportunity to recite the pipeline?
No.
The township isn't liable? What about Flint, Michigan? Have you learned any lessons from Flint, Michigan on liability and the chain of liability?
Well, that's a different animal in Flint. That was poor decision making by the powers that be in Flint, Michigan. But what we're talking about is, are the local townships at risk or at fault? And the answer would have to be no, they're not, because the only thing that they're at fault for is either acting in one direction against the will of the people, or failing to act against the will of the people. That's the only two things that really, when you're elected. I mean, this is my first endeavor into elected office, and I've been trying to do my homework with regards to what the responsibilities are. Elected officials, they're responsible to the people, and that's it. This company is a private entity. They are making deals with landowners and so forth. So if there's a break, that's a good question. Who's responsible for that? Because you have to understand that these companies are LLCs. So their liability is limited as well, and they do that on purpose. So there's a question in the back here.
I have a couple questions. If one municipality along the route of the pipeline succeeds and says you can't do that here, since everything's connected, does that put the kibosh on the whole plan?
It could force a very expensive reroute.
Right.
Okay.
Which is pretty close to the kibosh.
And the other question is, have any of the news cycles been involved, like any of the major networks?
Nope.
Or are people afraid to go that route because they're afraid of their properties becoming less valuable if the word gets out?
We've had a lot of local coverage. We're working really hard on national coverage. So if anybody has any...
Do you want national coverage?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I've personally reached out to every single national news coverage that talked about DAPL, Keystone. This is an energy transfer project now.
This is the same company. This is the Standing Rock of Suburbia. We may not get the press out here till the soccer moms start doing their civil disobedience, but at some point, it's going to be national news.
Okay.
Maria?
Okay, quick question. It's a little bit of a different question. So I think it was last month in Morgantown, you said a landowner, not Sunoco, caught the leak.
Yes.
Can you, how does that happen? How do we catch it if it's not?
The homeowner's son noticed a change in the earth. The earth had become blackened around the leak site. So the homeowner's son notified Sunoco. It took Sunoco about 2.5 hours to come out and investigate and shut the line
How
down.
long might it have been leaking?
It could have been leaking for a very long time. Could have been leaking for days or a week. So we really don't know how much material was leaked.
We've been talking about the local municipalities, but someone who got hit with the eminent domain situation, I found that the state PUC is at the heart of our problem.
Yeah.
And so why aren't we talking about what we could do, with the state, and our state legislature, and the courts? That's the big part of our problem.
We need to get the state.
Well,
Have a law for
we have, I've been fighting with the PUC, and I don't know if any of the other jihadists in the room, that comment hurt. That hurt me, that hurt my children, my wife, my family, my friends, my neighbors. Anyone, that's what we're up against at the state level. We need to continue to press on our elected officials at that.
This is why we need to pay attention to local and state elections and also organize among our own communities.
So some of you may know me, I'm Michelle Truitt, I'm former Representative Dan Truitt's wife. And I should stand up, I guess, I'm sorry. You may or may not know how the process works. A constituent came to Dan, when he was the state representative, and said, this is happening. He stopped what he was doing, and he contacted the PUC chairman. He asked for a meeting immediately. He wrote a letter, and he talked with the commissioner, and said, eminent domain should not apply here. This is not a public utility. He was passionate. He was tireless in this fight, and it didn't matter. Ultimately, the decisions were made above his head, and the PUC commission determined that Sunoco would be granted that public utility status. Dan fought this from the very beginning. The fact is that some information that you all have provided us tonight is very scary, but some of it is not complete. We're not looking at pipeline. I'm against the pipeline. We're very much against the pipeline. The pipeline is not going to be 3 feet beneath our feet. It's not going to be underneath that lady's living room. Unfortunately, the pipelines are below all of our living rooms. You saw the map. The fact is that it's going to happen. Now we have to look at the safety factors. The pipeline is happening. It's not a done deal, but it's likely to happen. The fact is that when Dan went to Sunoco and said, we need a meeting, they listened to him. They rerouted some of the line. So that was also incorrect. They will reroute lines if you can prove why they should be rerouted.
We did have part of our pipeline rerouted away from the irrigation fields on our soccer field in town.
Yeah. So. And the fact is too that we've had a couple of fuel spills right here on the road. The Sunoco station here at Good Paley Pike. There's been a fuel spill here. It was about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. There is fuel in the ground, and that is going to be, and it happened along the pipeline proposal as well. And what's going to happen is now all of the groundwater that they're going to put into the ground to help with the process of putting the pipeline into the ground, that has to be extracted and it has to be removed in tanks now. They were going to just put it right back into the ground. It has a lot of chemicals in it that are bad for the environment, bad for our children, bad for our drinking water, the animals, all of our wildlife. So because Dan and this other constituent got together, they showed them exactly where these fuel spill sites occurred. So now Sunoco has to do the right thing. And they have to extract it from the ground, they have to remove it, clean it, and dispose of it. So at least that's the case as far as we're aware. The thing I have an issue with is there's an open spot on Boot Road and East Grand Oak Lane. We're getting 1.5 inches of water tomorrow. It is not closed, and I want to know what's going to happen. I want to know what's going to happen when there's a sinkhole on Boot Road.
I already have
tomorrow.
a sinkhole on my property, thanks to Sunoco. 20 years ago, they did a pipeline, and they promised me that they were going to run the pipeline under Boot Road. Can they store their pipe on my property? Can they put stone? They'll make everything brand new. Oh yeah, I went on a trip for 3 days, came back, 30 foot by 30 foot by 30 foot deep hole in my property. That was the promise Sunoco kept it. And you know what? I have been fighting them for 3 years. They took me to court. They got an injunction against me to bring their Abrams tank on my property so they could drill a hole. They wouldn't tell me why they're drilling the hole. They brought this thing on. Let me tell you something. Remember last month we heard, oh, well, we're going to have sound barriers. You're not going to hear anything? Excuse my language. Cow defecation. It is as they were deaf. They had to wear the sound. They couldn't hear each other. It was that loud. And what they're going to be doing, it's going to be probably the same machine. It's the size of an neighbor's tank. It's from that wall up to the front and goes over here from where I'm standing over there. And it goes up 30, 40 feet.
Yeah.
And Sunoco is lying. They do not have all easements. I refuse to give them one. They arrogantly sent me a letter a few weeks ago. Oh, you haven't cashed your check with the offer, with the easement that you signed. I'm gonna send the CEO of Sunoco a response, and I don't wanna say it in public.
So we know what gets into our basements. How do we detect it? What's out there that we can put in our basements? What's that?
So you can get a gas chromatograph. There are combustible gas detectors that are.
Like Depot, Lowe's, where,
They're really expensive.
what are we talking about?
Okay, wait, hold on.
$1,500 to $2,500.
I will take that question and we'll get back to that, okay? I do have plans to come back with a list of companies that we've been talking to. Because there's two things we gotta look at. We gotta look at wells, okay? We gotta test our well water now, and we gotta test our water along the way.
Yes.
Also, we got tests for, which I have not heard anything about, is radon. Now, I've seen, back in 2015, there was a study done. They said the radon level in the state of Pennsylvania has been rising ever since the wells have been pumping. The problem is, what they haven't talked about is, what are the radon effects along the pipeline that's going horizontal, that's pumping to our areas? Because remember, they're going to have to break these rocks and drill through to put these pipes in. They're going to be releasing radon, and I have not heard anybody yet say, let's do a study on that.
I just want to say, Mr. Casey, and to the Middletown Coalition, I have tremendous respect for all of you for taking on this fight. Thank you for stepping up and fighting the good fight for everybody. Ms. Truitt, I know she just stepped out. I think that she kind of gave us a reality check that this pipeline may very well be our new reality. I'm sad to say that. I just paid off my house last week. I've been looking forward to this. But after tonight, this is a horrifying scenario. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure I want to stay here. I live in Marydale, and I am going to be the first one to say this. Shame on you to the East Goshen supervisors. You are our elected officials. You did nothing to protect us, while other townships have been fighting for their residents. And you should be ashamed of yourselves. We are families, we have schools, we have churches right along this, and you have been silent, and that is not acceptable.
Amen.
Vote.
One thing that hasn't been brought to light today is what the timeline is and the current status. I can shed a little bit of light on that, and maybe somebody else can do some more. But what we see along Boot Road and Ship Road and 352, you see these big platforms being built with wooden planks. That's where the drilling equipment will go. Most of the pipeline in our area here will be underground, and it will surface at these points where you see those drill things set up. And from previous Sunoco presentations, we know that it takes about 4 months for the drilling from one of those to the next one to occur. And in most cases, they're planning to drill both ways. So 4 months that way, turn the drill around, 4 months that way. So what you will see now that we have these platforms set up is the big drills, which look like horizontal ramps coming in, and then the drilling will start. So at that point, you know you have maybe 8 months. There's only one of those that I've seen on the pipeline so far, and I've looked at about 8 of the sites where these are going to go. But most of them, the trees have been cleared and the platforms have been set up. Somebody else may have more information about status, but that's what I've observed.
I believe it was actually at the meeting here in East Goshen that Sunoco stated that they thought that at this point they expected Mariner East 2 to be complete by the end of this calendar year and Mariner East 2X to be complete and operational by the end of summer of 2018. So that's the current calendar that they are publicizing, and our perspective on that is that it is not a done deal until the product is flowing, even if the pipe is in the ground.
I believe that they're thinking about 18 months to complete construction.